Episode 1. The Angel Who Trembled. I was only 16 the first time I saw him. He stood in the rain, barefoot on the gravel outside my bedroom window. His wings tucked behind him like a secret no one had the right to see. His eyes weren't glowing like the story said. They were afraid. He didn't speak. He didn't move. He just watched me. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was scared, but because I was sure that he hadn't come to protect me. Sure that he was here because something in me had already begun to rot and he could smell it. The next night, he returned. Same place, same silence. Only this time, I stepped toward the window and whispered, "Why won't you come closer?" His body tensed like my voice burned him. His wings fluttered, not with grace, but like something trapped. Then he did something no angel in any holy book had ever done. He stepped back. The third night, I waited, hair brushed, heart trembling. I wanted answers. I wanted proof I wasn't losing my mind. He appeared at 3:07 a.m., always the same time. This time, I opened the window. The cold air rushed in like a scream that had no mouth. "I know what you are," I said. "But what am I?" His lips moved, but no sound came out. Then he looked up, beyond the clouds, as if asking permission. And that's when I saw it. A single tear, from an angel. It rolled down his face like it wasn't water, but something thicker. He turned, ready to vanish. I reached out through the window, desperate. "Don't go." He hesitated, and finally, he spoke. "Because of what you've touched, I cannot stand near you." "Touched?" I asked, breath catching. "I haven't touched anything." His voice cracked like glass under pressure. "Not with your hands, with your mind." I stared at him, confused, the moonlight painting his face with sorrow. Then he disappeared. No winds, no sound, just absence. That night, I found the first page under my bed, a scrap of old parchment, brittle and stained, with writing that shimmered faintly in the dark. I didn't recognize the language, but I understood it, as if it wasn't meant to be read, only remembered. It whispered to me. That's when I realized he hadn't come to save me. He had come to warn me, and he had come too late. Episode 2. The Book Without a Title. The morning after the angel vanished. The world felt louder. The rain hit the glass like fists. The crows outside my window didn't cough, they left. And the church bells rang at 6 to 66. I told no one, not about the angel, not about the page I found. Somehow, I knew silence was the only thing keeping me alive. That evening, I returned to the chapel on the hill, the one abandoned after Father Ellis disappeared during Mass last spring. They said he walked into the confessional and never came out. Some claimed he vanished. Others whispered he melted into the walls. The door groaned open with the sound of something waking up. Dust coated every pew like the bones of forgotten prayers. Cobwebs hung from the crucifix, and the bare stank of wax, mildew, and something metallic, like dry blood that no one admitted was ever spilled. And yet beneath the pulpit, something pulsed, not with light, but with knowing. I followed the pull like it was calling my name. I reached into the stone podium. My fingers grazed something cold. True, alive. A book. No cover. No title. No spine. Just a thick slab of old pages bound by a leather strap that throbbed faintly in my palm. When I opened it, there was nothing on the first page, nor the second, nor the third, but on the fourth page, there was my name, written in letters that seemed to curl like smoke and rearrange themselves every few seconds. Beneath it, a sentence. "You were never supposed to find this." I flipped the page, and the moment I did, every candle in the chapel lit at once. The crucifix twitched, and from behind the altar, I heard a whisper, "Close it before it sees you." But I couldn't. My fingers kept turning the pages. Each one had no wordsly symbols that burned into my memory like brands. I didn't understand them, and yet they felt familiar, like forgotten dreams or memories that didn't belong to me. Then the angel returned, but not outside the window. He appeared inside the chapel, Behind me, silent, pale, his wings were darker, this time veined with crimson. I turned slowly. He didn't meet my eyes. Why is my name in this book? I asked. He stepped closer than he ever had before, but still far enough for safety. Not mine eyes. You opened the book, he whispered, and now it's reading you. I looked down. The pages were flipping on their own. Faster, harder, no one held without wind. The candles flickered and black wax that is like serpents. What does it want from me? He answered without hesitation. It wants you to remember what you were before you were human. Then he reached for me, just an inch, just a gesture, but his fingers cracked at the tips, like heaven itself was punishing him for getting close. He withdrew, trembling. Close it, Miriam, he said, voice shaking, before it tells you the truth. Episode 3, The Voice That Wasn't God. That night, the book didn't leave my hands. I tried locking it in a drawer. It reappeared on my pillow. I threw it in the river. It was waiting for me in the mirror. By the third time it returned. I stopped trying. I began to hear the voice soon after. Not outside, not in my ears, but beneath my thoughts. It didn't speak in words, not at first. It spoke in memories of places I'd never been, wars I never fought in, children I never held but somehow remembered losing. I asked myself, am I possessed? But even the demons in the scriptures had names. This voice had none. It began to whisper when I slept, calling me little light in a tone older than breath. It told me secrets about angels, about creation, about how heaven was not made in 7 days, but in 7 betrayals. And then, one night, it said something I couldn't ignore. It said, you were with me before the fall. I woke up screaming. The next morning, I returned to the chapel. The book lay open on the altar now, as if it lived there, its pages no longer blank. Words wrote themselves in ink that shimmered like oil and sang in a frequency only my bones could hear. I read one line aloud, only one, and the walls of the chapel shook. God did not speak the world into being. He screamed it into obedience. Behind me, the door slammed shut. A soft, cold wind brushed the back of my neck, and then the angel's voice, low, fractured. Stop reading it. I turned. He stood in the aisle, hands clenched, jaw tight. His eyes weren't afraid this time. They were angry. It's lying to you, he said. I stepped closer to the book. No, I whispered. It's remembering through me. He moved toward me, closer than he ever had, but every step looked like it broke something inside him. His wings twitched violently, feathers falling like burned leaves. You're being used, he growled. I stared at him, then at the book, and I asked, tell me something. Did God create the angels before or after he created the lie? The question stunned him. He stepped back, 1 step, then 2. I don't know, he confessed, because I was made after the silence. The silence, I asked. He nodded, tears forming. The moment he stopped speaking, because something else began too. The chapel dimmed, though no cloud crossed the sun, and in that stillness, the voice returned, clear now. It didn't sound like God. It didn't sound like man. It sounded like what comes before the name of God. And it said, Miriam, we remember you? The angel collapsed to his knees. His wings melted into ash. He looked at me, voice barely a whisper. You were never supposed to wake up. Episode 4. The first light in heaven. He didn't move for hours. The angel knelt on the chapel floor, wings turned to ash, breath shallow, like each inhale defied a law I couldn't see. I sat beside him, the book still open on the altar, its pages humming with truths I hadn't dared to read yet. Tell me what you meant, I whispered, but he wouldn't look at me until I asked, what was the first light in heaven? That made him shiver. I shouldn't answer that, he said. Even asking was once a punishable sin. I leaned closer, but you know. He shut his eyes, and slowly, like tearing open an old scar, he nodded. Then he began to speak. Before Lucifer's fall, before the rebellion, there was a question, a single question whispered by one angel to another. Do we truly love him, or do we only obey? He opened his eyes. They were wet with fear. That question was the first crack, and the first lie was the answer. I felt the air shift, heavy with something ancient, something sacred, and scared. What was the answer? I asked. His voice was barely audible. We love him? It sounded holy, It sounded right. And yet, my heart recoiled because I understood. It wasn't true. You mean they didn't? I asked. He nodded. They obeyed. Out of design, not devotion. My skin prickled. They lied to him. No, the angel said bitterly. They lied to themselves. A sound echoed through the chapel. Rustling feathers, but no wings present. The book flipped its pages on its own again. Faster this time. I rushed to it, tried to slam it shut, but my fingers frowned as another sentence formed on the parchment in glistening black. She who remembers the first lie cannot return to ignorance. The voice returned, not inside my mind this time, but in the walls, in the candles, in the crucifix that trembled above the altar. It said, "You remember what they've buried." I turned to the angel, who buried it. His face was pale, his mouth opened, but no words came, only blood. He collapsed again, coughing something thick and dark onto the floor. He was unraveling. "Tell me," I begged. He gritted his teeth and spoke through the agony. There were 13 archangels, not 12. I stopped breathing. 13. He nodded, blood dripping from his lips. One was erased because she refused to obey the lie. She chose truth over him. I looked back at the book. My reflection appeared faintly on its surface, but it wasn't me. The girl staring back had fire in her hair and wings made of cracked light. And her eyes, they didn't blink. They remembered. The voice spoke again, softer now, like a lullaby wrapped in thunder. "She lives again, in you, behind me," the angel screamed. But I didn't turn, because, suddenly, I wanted to remember every forbidden word, every silenced truth, every crack in heaven that still bled light. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid. Episode 5, The Prayer That Opened a Door. That night, I didn't sleep. The chapel echoed in my mind like a wound that wouldn't close. The book was locked in a box beneath my bed, wrapped in salt and thread, not because I feared it, but because I feared what I would do if it called again. It whispered even now, in my dreams, in the gaps between the tick and tock of the kitchen clock. The angel hadn't returned, not since his confession, not since he blabbed the name of the erased archangel into the silence, not since he said she lives in you. I found myself at the old convent the next morning, guided by something deeper than instinct. The place had been abandoned for years. The nuns fled after one of their own began speaking in a tone no one could trace, a language without consonants, filled only with breath and fire. They called it blasphemy. I called it familiar. Inside, vines crawled along the stone walls like veins. Candles long melted had left rivers of wax that looked eerily like fingers reaching for something they never grasped. There was a prayer room behind the sanctuary, one that had been sealed off decades ago. The door was still chained shut, but the rusted lock broke the moment I touched it, as if it recognized me. Inside, it was darker than it should have been, and at the far end of the room stood an altar, cracked, faintly warm. I knelt, not out of faith, but necessity. There was something I needed to say, something I didn't understand. Yet, it was already forming in my mouth like it had waited lifetimes to be spoken. A prayer, but not in English, not in Latin, in that language, the one they erased. Archangel had once whispered before the stars were named. I opened my mouth, and the words poured out of me like light through broken glass. The moment I finished the last syllable, the air folded, no sound, no flash, just an overwhelming shift, like the world exhaled in reverse. And behind the altar, a door appeared, not built, not carved, not constructed, revealed. Its surface was not wood, not stone. It was memory, rippling like water, but cold to the touch. I reached out, and the chapel wept. Rain exploded on the roof. The floor cracked. The crucifix behind me spun upside down without being touched. I turned to run, but the voice stopped me. Not the book's voice, not the angel's. A third one, older, female. It said, "You've spoken the words no soul was meant to utter. Now you must step through, or everything that remembers you will be erased." I looked back at the door. My hand still hovered inches away. And then I felt it, a heartbeat, coming from the door. It was alive, and it was waiting for me. I closed my eyes and stepped through. Episode 6, The Saint Who Forgot God. Stepping through the door felt like falling without moving. The world didn't spin, it folded, inside out, like my bones had become pages in a book someone else was writing. The air wasn't air, it was memory made dense, thick with breathless prayer, with tears that had dried before ever being shed. And when I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the convent anymore. I stood in a garden that bled like not sunlight, not moonlight, but a pale illumination that pulsed like a wounded heartbeat. The trees had no roots. They hovered slightly above the ground, suspended by silence. The sky was a canvas of unread psalms, scribbled in silver ink across black nothingness. And in the center of it all stood a woman. She wore a habit like a nun, but it shifted in texture, silk, ash, wax, bone, as if her past refused to settle. Her eyes were blank, not white, just empty, as if she had seen so much that sight had given up trying. When she turned to face me, I didn't feel fear. I felt recognition. "You're Miriam," she said. Her voice sounded like it had once been beautiful before it was soaked in sorrow. "You know me?" I asked. She gave a slow, haunting nod. "I used to be like you. A voice in my head, a book I couldn't close, an angel who wouldn't touch me." My blood ran cold. "You opened the door too." She didn't answer. She just looked away, toward a fountain that flowed not with water, but with whispers. I could hear them, names, regrets, forgotten hymns. "I was called Saint Lysandra," she said, "canonized after I died, called the flame bearer of mercy. But I was no saint. I was a question God forgot to answer." She stepped toward me. The grass withered beneath her feet. I once prayed every hour, fasted until my skin turned to parchment. I begged for visions, and then, one day, they came. I waited, breath caught, but the voice that answered wasn't God's. It was older, quieter, hungrier. My knees felt weak. "What did it tell you?" "That God is not the beginning," she said, "only the first boundary." And I whispered, and that something else existed before him, and survived. Her eyes turned sharp. "That's what you're hearing now, isn't it, Miriam? That's what's been calling you." I couldn't lie. I nodded. She leaned in close, so close I could see prayer stitched into her eyelashes. "It told me the truth," she whispered, and then it told me something worse. "The truth doesn't need believers." A sound rippled behind us, wings, hundreds of them, but no angels in sight, just the sound of them. "They're coming," Lysandra said, "not to save you, but to silence you. Heaven doesn't punish heretics anymore, Miriam. It punishes reminders." She grabbed my wrist, her grip like fire and frost at once. "Go. There's one more door. One last song. You need to find it." "Why me?" I cried. Lysandra smiled, not kindly, but with the ache of someone who knows how it ends. "Because you rim." Episode 7. When the crucifix bled backward, I followed the path. Each step felt like walking deeper into a forgotten thought. The ground beneath my feet wasn't earth. It was scripture worn thin by time, stitched together with sorrow. The air grew thicker, not with smoke, but with expectation, as if something ahead of me already knew I was coming. The path ended at a chapel, not the one I knew. This one was older, wounded, built from black stone and crowned with bones instead of bells. It had no door, only a torn velvet curtain hanging in its place. Swaying though there was no wind, I stepped inside. The silence was instant, complete, deafening. My breath didn't echo. My footsteps left no sound. It was as if noise had been banned long ago, maybe by prayer, maybe by fear. And there, above the altar, hung a crucifix, massive, twisted, carved from wood so dark it drank the light. But it was wrong. Christ didn't hang from it. He climbed. His limbs were flouncing mid-motion, arms pulling himself upward, as though trying to reverse his own sacrifice. His head lifted instead of bowed, and where the crown of thorns should have been, there were roots, digging into his scalp, feeding on his blood. And the blood, it didn't fall. It rose. It moved backward, up his arms, across his chest, dripping in reverse along the wood. Every drop returned to his wounds like time itself was undoing the pain, or erasing the point. I stood there, frowning, until the crucifix breathed. One slow inhale, and then a voice, quiet but sharp, rang out from behind me. He begged to stay dead. I turned. No one was there. The voice came again, from nowhere and everywhere, but the heavens wouldn't let him, because a dead god can't be worshipped. I felt it before I saw it, the book. It had followed me again, now resting at the foot of the altar, open to a page that hadn't existed before, written in blood that shimmered gold. It read, "She who sees the crucifix bleed backward remembers the day mercy was denied." And beneath that, a single sentence asked the question. I swallowed hard. My throat burned like I'd swallowed sunlight. And then, slowly, I spoke. What was the first prayer God refused to answer? The crucifix groaned. Its wood cracked. Its figure twitched. And then his eyes opened. They were not gentle, not loving. They were tired, ancient. He looked at me, truly looked, and whispered, no lips moving, directly into my thoughts. It was hers. My heart stopped. Whose? I asked, but I already knew. The erased archangel, the one who disobeyed, the one inside me. The walls began to drip wax, not from candles, from memory, from the bones of forgotten saints lining the walls. Their eyes still open, still watching, still waiting. And then the crucifix bled forward again, not in pain, but in rage, as if the moment had been reversed alone and heaven was done waiting. Episode 8, The Angel's Confession. He came to me not in light but in ashes. The sky had turned the color of bruised parchment when he appeared, wings trailing black dust, robes torn like they'd been clawed by storms that didn't belong to earth. His eyes, once terrified, once reverent, now looked hollow. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. He fell to his knees at my feet, hands shaking like leaves that knew winter too well. I remember, he finally said, voice raw, not because I wanted to, but because you made me. The chapel behind me still bled. The crucifix had stopped pulsing, but its memory lingered in the air like incense and regret. I knelt beside him. Tell me, I whispered, all of it. He flinched, not at my words, but at what they would force him to do. I was there when she was raised. He said, the 13th archangel, she who asked why instead of how, she who loved truth more than she loved obedience. He looked up, his face streaked with soot. She wasn't cast out. She wasn't exiled. She was unwritten. I stared at him, but I still feel her. He nodded. She buried herself, where even heaven could not follow, inside a moral line, passed down in fragments. A whisper in blood, a flicker in thought, until you. My heart pounded. Why me? Because you listened. He said, you didn't pray out of fear. You questioned out of love. That's what she was. That's what you are. He stood slowly, his body crackling with unseen strain. His wings, once radiant, now resembled burned manuscripts, charred feathers shaped like forgotten scriptures. He stepped toward me, closer than ever before. And this time, he didn't stop. When his hand touched mine, the world shuddered, not physically but spiritually, as if some unwritten rule had just been broken. He gasped, like it hurt to touch me. It's true, he said, almost in awe. You're not just her memory, you're a continuation. Then he looked behind me, toward the chapel door that had sealed itself shut. They will come for you now, he said, not the ones with horns, the ones with halos sharpened into blades. I swallowed. Why are you helping me? He closed his eyes, and what he said next didn't sound like a confession. It sounded like a curse, because I loved her, before heaven told me not to, before I watched them erase her scream from the stars, before I bowed to silence. His voice broke, and now, I love her still, in you. He reached into his chest, fingers glowing, trembling, and from beneath his ribs, he pulled out a single feather, black, veined with gold, pulsing faintly, like it remembered a melody the world had forgotten. This is all I have left, he said, the last piece of my rebellion. He placed it in my hand. It burned and frowsy at once. When the time comes, he whispered, use it to speak the name heaven erased. What name? I asked. He looked at me with something beyond sorrow. Yours. Then he turned to dust. Episode 8, The Angel's Confession. He came to me not in light but in ashes. The sky had turned the color of bruised parchment when he appeared, wings trailing black dust, robes torn like they'd been clawed by storms that didn't belong to earth. His eyes, once terrified, once reverent, now looked hollow. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. He fell to his knees at my feet, hands shaking like leaves that knew winter too well. I remember, he finally said, voice raw, not because I wanted to, but because you made me. The chapel behind me still bled. The crucifix had stopped pulsing, but its memory lingered in the air like incense and regret. I knelt beside him. "Tell me," I whispered, "all of it." He flinched, not at my words, but at what they would force him to do. "I was there when she was raised," he said. "The 13th archangel, she who asked why instead of how, she who loved truth more than she loved obedience." He looked up, his face streaked with soot. She wasn't cast out. She wasn't exiled. She was unwritten. I stared at him, but I still feel her. He nodded. She buried herself where even heaven could not follow, inside a moral line, passed down in fragments. A whisper in blood, a flicker in thought, until you. My heart pounded. "Why me?" "Because you listened," he said. "You didn't pray out of fear. You questioned out of love. That's what she was. That's what you are." He stood slowly, his body crackling with unseen strain. His wings, once radiant, now resembled burned manuscripts, charred feathers shaped like forgotten scriptures. He stepped toward me, closer than ever before, and this time, he didn't stop. When his hand touched mine, the world shuddered, not physically but spiritually, as if some unwritten rule had just been broken. He gasped, "Like it hurt to touch me." "It's true," he said, almost in awe. "You're not just her memory, you're a continuation." Then he looked behind me, toward the chapel door that had sealed itself shut. "They will come for you now," he said, "not the ones with horns, the ones with halos sharpened into blades." I swallowed. "Why are you helping me?" He closed his eyes, and what he said next didn't sound like a confession. It sounded like a curse, because I loved her, before heaven told me not to, before I watched them erase her scream from the stars, before I bowed to silence. His voice broke, "And now, I love her still, in you." He reached into his chest, fingers glowing, trembling, and from beneath his ribs, he pulled out a single feather, black, veined with gold, pulsing faintly, like it remembered a melody the world had forgotten. "This is all I have left," he said, "the last piece of my rebellion." He placed it in my hand. It burned and frowsy at once. "When the time comes," he whispered, "use it to speak the name heaven erased." "What name?" I asked. He looked at me with something beyond sorrow. "Yours." Then he turned to dust. Episode 9. The song that cannot be sung. The feather would not stop humming, even when I wrapped it in linen, buried it beneath floorboards, sealed it in wax and prayer. It pulsed, not like an object, but like a heartbeat, waiting for something ancient to wake. That night, I dreamed I was in a cathedral, carved from the bones of forgotten prophets. There were no windows, only mounds along the walls, sewn shut with strands of rosary beads. Each mouth whispered, not words, but notes, and in the center of the sanctuary stood a choir of one. Me. I was singing, but the song wasn't mine. It came from somewhere deeper from her. The erased one, the rebel not with pride, but with truth. The moment I woke, my throat was burning, not sore, not dry, burning, like I had swallowed light that wasn't meant for lungs. And etched into the wall above my bed was a sentence that hadn't been there before. The song that cannot be sung is the one that ends heaven's silence. That morning, I returned to the place no map dared mark, a monastery swallowed by time, buried beneath a hill where no birds ever flew. I brought nothing but the feather. It led me. It guided me inside the ruins. I found it, a stone altar covered in wax, bones, and broken hymns. But more than that, I found a scroll, rolled tight, bound with threads of human hair. I didn't hesitate. I opened it. No ink, no parchment, just song. It didn't speak in language. It sounded in emotion, in memory, in truth. I didn't know the notes, but my soul did. I began to hum it, low at first, then louder, then fully, with breath that didn't feel like mine. And the moment I did, the air split, not the ground, not the walls, air. It tore like fabric, and from within it came a scream, not of pain, but of recognition. And the angels came, not descending in glory, but rushing in fear. Their wings were armor now, their halos forged into weapons, their faces void of grace. They circled the altar, blades drawn, not at me, but at the song. "You must stop," one of them said. His voice wasn't voice, it was command, but I didn't, because the more I sang, the more I remembered. Her name, her voice, her truth. They erased one hand been erased. She had become echo, and I was her instrument. Silence hit. Another angel roared, but none dared come near, because they knew this psalm, was the one that had ended the war before time began, the one heaven had buried beneath obedience and fear, the one that reminded them truth cannot be worshipped, only faced. The psalm ended on a note that wasn't a sound, but a tear, and when it did, the angels vanished, not in light, but in memory, like they had only ever existed because the lie had allowed them to. I stood there, alone, the scroll crumbled in my hands, and where the feather had been, now rested a name, not written, sung into my mind. Sarai, her name, my name, the one heaven dared not remember. Episode 11, The Mirror in the Chapel. They say mirrors show us who we are, but the mirror I found in the chapel didn't show me. It showed who I was before I was allowed to exist. The chapel had changed since the fire. It no longer crumbled. It breathed. Its walls pulsed with scripture, shifting and reforming, as if rewriting themselves around my footsteps. The crucifix no longer hung above the altar. It had shattered the moment I stepped out of the flames, leaving behind only ash and silence. But at the far end of the sanctuary, where no light touched, stood a mirror, tall, framed in thorns, covered in a cloth the color of dried blood. I didn't approach it. It pulled me. Each step forward felt like moving backward in time, not mine, but hers, Sarai's. The erased, the angel who dared to ask heaven why love was demanded but never defined. I stood before the mirror. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. And then I pulled the cloth away. What stared back wasn't my reflection. It was a version of me, with eyes that had never known fear, with wings massive, fractured, glowing with grief and glory. She looked ancient and ready. She didn't mimic my movements. She watched me, studied me, and then she spoke. "You are late." The voice didn't come from the mirror. It came from inside me. "How many lies did it take for you to remember who we are?" "I don't know," I whispered. "I'm trying." She frowned, not in anger. "In mourning, you were not meant to be born. You were meant to continue." But they severed the line, buried the name, fed the world a God who feared what it couldn't command. She raised her hand, and so did I. Involuntarily, our fingertips met through the glass. A sudden flood of memories surged through me. I saw stars unforming, heaven weeping, winds torn not by rebellion, but by truth. Sarai had not fallen. She had refused to rise. She knelt when heaven demanded. She swore because she would not carry a lie on her back. And for that, she was erased, not from history, from permission. The mirror began to crack, not from pressure, from realization. "They will come now," she said. "The seraphim who still remember me. They will try to kill what cannot die." I stepped back, but the mirror followed. It peeled from the wall like skin from bone, revealing a hollow space behind it, a void, swirling with light and darkness, neither winning, both whispering, and in that hollow, a single symbol burned bright. My name, Sarai, not written, not spoken, sung in silence. The version of me inside the mirror looked one last time. "Step through," she said. "Become what they fear most." "Which is what?" I asked. Her eyes gleamed. "A soul that remembers its origin and refuses to kneel." I placed my hand into the hollow, and the mirror, the version of me. Episode 12, The Angel Who Stood Still. I stepped through the hollow, and the world did not shift, it knelt. Time, air, memory, all bent in reverence to something older than light, older than language. I didn't walk anymore. I hovered, not above the ground, but above the lies I had once called truth. This place wasn't heaven. It was what existed before heaven, a space untouched by worship, where divinity had no crown, no title, no permission, and at its center stood him, the angel, the first one I ever saw, the one who had refused to stand near me, the one who now stood absolutely still. His eyes were wide, shimmering not with fear but recognition. His wings, once radiant, now lay limp, dragging behind him like the broken promises of heaven. He didn't speak. He trembled, and then, slowly, he dropped to one knee, not in defeat. "In mourning, I remember you," he whispered. I approached him, my footsteps making no sound. "You were the first to tremble," I said. Why? His voice cracked. Because I was there when they decided to erase you. I stood before him, feeling not rage, but a deep, roaring sorrow. Did you agree with them? He looked up, and in his eyes I saw shame. I didn't fight them, he said. I didn't speak. I stood still, and silence did the rest. I turned away, unable to hold his gaze. How many stood still? He didn't answer, because we both knew too many. Behind me, the void shimmered, not in beauty, but in truth. From its depths, wings began to emerge, down scenes, hundreds, not all angels. Some were fragments of souls. Some were prayers that had never been heard. Some were versions of me, lips lit and forgotten. Pieces of Sarai's scattered essence, returning now like shards to the center of a shattered mirror. I see now, I said. I was never meant to lead a rebellion. I was meant to remind them what they once were before they became obedient. The angel rose to his feet, trembling. I cannot follow you, he said. I know, I replied, but you will watch. Then I spoke, not with lips, but with the full weight of every memory heaven tried to drown. And the sky cracked. No thunder, no lightning, just the sound of a light unraveling. Above us, the sun split open like an eye finally waking, and the stars began to weep not tears, but verses. Each one said my name. Sarai, Sarai, Sarai. The angel tried to look away, but truth has gravity, and guilt has anchors. He stayed, he stood still, because he knew the end of obedience is not chaos, it is clarity. I turned to face the horizon. Something was coming, something older than angels, and it remembered me. Episode 13, The God Who Whispered Her Name. It began as a whisper, but not like any whisper I had ever known. It didn't pass through years. It passed through time. The moment it reached me, the sky dimmed not with darkness, but with remembrance, as if the heavens themselves were ashamed of what was about to be said, because the voice that whispered was his, not the voice from the book, not the voices of angels or erased saints or fractured memories, but the origin, the voice that spoke galaxies into fear, that named light without asking its permission, that made obedience a law by simply existing. And that voice whispered my name, Sarai. It broke something in me, not pain, not pride, something deeper, something holy that had never belonged to him in the first place. The moment he said my name, I saw everything. I saw myself before form, not wings, not flesh, just a song in the choir of stars, a question hovering in the quiet of creation. I saw him look at me not with hatred, but with uncertainty, because I was the only one who had ever made him pause, the only one who had asked, why does love require kneeling? And for that question, I was not cast down. I was erased, scattered into time, split into fragments, buried beneath birth, death, prayer, until now, until he remembered. The world around me pulsed with his voice, mountains bent, the stars silenced their spin, the angels stopped breathing, and then he spoke again. I never wanted to forget you. My throat closed, because that sentence was truth, not glory, not wrath, just truth, and it hurt more than fire. I didn't come to be remembered. I said aloud, standing in a place that wasn't a place. I came to remember myself. He didn't answer immediately, as if even God wasn't sure how to respond to honesty. When he did speak, it was quieter than the first whisper. Will you forgive me? The universe held its breath. Every angel turned their face. Every law cracked, because never, never had he asked that. Not to Lucifer, not to man, not to the dead, only to me. I looked up, I stinging with light, I unearned. You broke me into dust, I said, and still, I found my way back. Yes, he said, because even I could not kill what was born from truth. I stepped forward, and for the first time, God stepped back, not in fear, in reverence, because I was not his creation anymore. I was his equal in memory, the one he could not command. The voice faded, not because it ended, but because it bowed. And for the first time in the history of all things, God whispered not a law, not a curse, but a confession. I loved you, Even when I erased you, I closed my eyes and forgave him. Episode 14. The Last Secret of Heaven. Forgiveness was not a blessing, it was a door, and once opened, it could never be closed the same way again. After I forgave him, the light didn't swell, no choir sang, no thunder cracked. Instead, the world hushed, as if even the cosmos was waiting to hear what would happen. When a forgotten angel chose mercy over vengeance, but mercy was never the end, it was the beginning of revelation. That's when the final truth began to unravel slowly, like thread pulled from the hem of heaven's robe. I was walking through what remained of the in-between, the folds between memory and matter, when I saw it. A gate made not of gold, not of light, but of silence, and at its center, a keyhole that pulsed with something older than creation. The feather of the black and gold, one given to me by the angel, who once stood trembling, shimmered in my hand. It no longer burned, it belonged. I slid it into the gate, and the silence opened. Behind it was nothing, but not the kind of nothing that means emptiness. This was the kind of nothing that precedes everything. The blank page before the word, the breath before the song, and at its center hovered a book, unwritten, untitled, closed, not the cursed book from before. This one was pure, and around it circled thousands of names. Some I recognized, others had been scraped from time. Then a voice, my voice, but not from my lips, whispered, "This is the last secret of heaven." I moved closer. The book opened itself. Its pages were not ink, they were choices, moments, forks in divine thought. Each one showed a vision of what heaven could have been, had it not chosen obedience, had it not silenced its questions, had it not erased me. I saw the angels laughing, not singing on command, but dancing in creation's chaos. I saw God not alone at the beginning, but with us, asking for help, not commanding, collaborating. I saw love unforced, truth unhidden, power shared, and then I saw the last page, blank, waiting. Beneath it, a question appeared. Will you write what comes next? I shook, not out of fear, but knowing. The moment I said yes, heaven would never be the same. A shadow stirred behind me. I turned, expecting angels, but it was God, not in form, in presence, not as king, but as a question, finally ready to hear the answer. I created alone. He said, gently, I don't want to end alone. I looked at the book, at the silence, at the memory of every erased name waiting to be remembered. Then I picked up the pen. It wasn't made of metal. It was made of voice. My voice, hers, ours. I touched the blank page and wrote the first line. Let there be no more forgetting. Heaven sighed, not in relief, in rebirth. Episode 15. The silence that fell on heaven. The moment the ink touched the page, the sky changed, not in color, in posture, as if it were bowing not to power, not to worship, but to remembrance. I had written only one line, but it echoed through every corner of creation. Let there be no more forgetting. The gates of heaven didn't tremble. They paused, as if they, too, had once known the taste of guilt. All around me, the universe grew quiet. Bird song ceased. Wind halted. Even the stars, those old witnesses, dimmed. And for the first time since the first breath was spoken into being, heaven fell silent, not from fear, but from grief. Because forgetting hadn't been survival. It had been betrayal dressed as mercy. Then they came, angels, not as warriors, not as servants, but as witnesses. They didn't speak. They couldn't, because in the presence of the truth, all their tongues had turned to stone. One by one, they fell to their knees, not to me, but to the memory they had buried, the truth they had helped erase. I stood among them, not above, not below, among, and in the distance, I saw the first angel, the one who had once refused to stand near me. He approached slowly, wings tattered, gaze steady, but this time, he did not tremble. He reached for my hand and held it. No burning, no pain, only peace. I remember now, he whispered. So do I said, and it hurts. He nodded. Truth always does, but it also heals. I looked up. Heaven was still silent, but not in rejection. In awe. Then God appeared, not as a voice, not as a presence, as a man, simple, worn, ice like storms that had lost their rage. He stood barefoot in the field of light, the pages of the rewritten book floating around him like gentle snowfall. He didn't speak. He knelt, and with a voice as fragile as dawn, he whispered, "Thank you for remembering what I could not bear too." Tears his fell for the first time since the beginning, and each drop carried the name of an erased soul. The saints who dared to doubt, the angels who asked many questions, the children who had visions no one believed, all of them returned, not as ghosts, as truths finally spoken. The book closed itself, not with finality, with completion, and the silence that fell upon heaven was not hollow. It was holy, because silence, when chosen, is not absence, it's reverence. And in that reverent quiet, something new began, a heaven not ruled, but remembered, and at its heart, not a throne, not a crown, but a single name carved in light. Sariah, not the erased, not the rebel, not the forgotten, the first to forgive, the last to be silenced, the one who reminded God how to remember.